Welcome to the Rotoworld Basketball Show. It is November 1st, aka Movember. I didn't get the message, neither did the gentleman. We all got beards, it's looking like here, but that's okay. We still have a month to go. Raphielle Johnson of NBC Sports is back. Dan Titus of Yahoo Sports is hanging out with us as well, and I am Vaughn Dalzell. This is the Rotoworld Basketball Show, and gentlemen, it has finally happened. James Harden has been traded, and now we get to break down what's going to look like with the Clippers, his fantasy value, and more. So, Rath, I'll let you do the honors, break down the trade, and let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah, it happened early Tuesday morning. Headed to LA, James Harden, PJ Tucker, and Philip Petrusev. Philadelphia will receive Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Kenny Martin Jr., Marcus Morris, a protected 2026 first-round pick via Oklahoma City, and second-round picks in 2024 and 2029. Oklahoma City, Sam Presti, where there's draft picks to be acquired. He's in it. They've got a 2027 first. It'll be a pick swap with the Clippers that they can execute then. So, yeah, technically a three-team deal, but obviously big news. James Harden headed back to L.A., Artesia High's finest, I guess.
Yeah, he seemed pretty excited to be there. I saw him already the highlights of him meeting his teammates in the locker room. Everyone looked somewhat excited or happy to see him except for Terrence Mann because he's like, man, there go my minutes. Dan, what did you think about the trade in general? Did you think a team won, whether it was the Clippers, the Sixers, or I guess the Thunder?
I mean, on paper, the Clippers obviously won. I'm just wondering how's that going to pan out over the course of this season. I think regular season's great news because this just raises the floor for the Clippers, a team that historically has missed a lot of games between their superstars and Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. James Harden's a regular season player. Like that, the dude plays when he's healthy, and I think it definitely is going to be an impact to Russell Westbrook and a few others, which we can talk about the fantasy impacts long term of both of these teams and the moves. But yeah, I think it's a good deal, for both sides. The Sixers cleared a lot of cap space, which was definitely a priority for them. They just grabbed like every power forward you could imagine in the NBA, it seems like. So RIP Paul Reed at this point. But yeah, I think it's a good deal for both sides. They got what they wanted. Philly gets the flexibility and they get off, a disgruntled player, while the Clippers raise their floor a little bit by getting a former All-Star in James Harden.
And for the Clippers, looks like the anticipated lineup is going to be James Harden, Paul George, Terrence Mann, Kawhi, and Zubac, as some reports. Raph, do you think potentially someone else could slip in there? I know Norman Powell's off the bench. He's the sixth man. Russell Westbrook, probably better off on the bench, I'd agree. And then PJ Tucker as well getting traded. So you think that lineup is solidified?
I don't necessarily agree that Russ would be better off the bench. And I say that because of pace. I think they've been playing a lot faster with Russ running the show with that first unit. And I think they need to play faster. You can bring James off the bench, that second unit. Now, obviously, you're going to be asking guys to sacrifice a bit from the ego standpoint. You never know how that's going to go. You can tell them, well, your way hasn't worked because none of you guys have a ring right now. But on the flip side, it's like you get a lot of guys like, I'm all in for the team as long as I get to do it my way. That kind of like unspoken asterisk, so to speak. So I'm interested to see how it all works out. I still don't think they're anywhere. They're much closer to Denver than they were before the trade. I think Philadelphia, for me personally, I think they may be the bigger winner just because of what it does for Tyrese Maxey. I've been on the bandwagon preseason, summer, all that. I think he's going to be outstanding for them. I think if anything, they're going to regret not paying him before the deadline because he's going to cost a lot more if he plays at a level that a lot of us expect him to when he goes into free agency next summer.
Yeah, I cannot wait to see what Tyrese Maxey does this season. I did want to pull up his odds on most improved player because I feel like he's going to be in that conversation now. He was going to be regardless, but now he's certainly going to be in there now that he gets to be a full-time starter. I will note the Clippers have the number one defensive rating in the NBA right now. We'll see how long that lasts with Mr. James Harden in town. Dan, some fantasy winners, losers in this trade?
Fantasy winner, I think Raph hit on it. It's definitely Tyrese Maxey. I have him as a top 30 guy for the rest of the season. Obviously, Eastern Conference Player of the Week, 36-6 over the first week of basketball. I think it's only going to be on the rise for this guy. I think a loser for the Sixers side is definitely Paul Reed. Looks like Kelly Oubre is going to be starting right now, while the rest of the trade pieces continue to get integrated into the system. Could be a revolving door power forward. Like Nick Nurse has a ton of options right now, but pay attention to that rotation because Nick Nurse definitely locks in on players. So it could be Kelly Oubre in the starting lineup going forward. I think this just gives more depth to the Philadelphia squad. On the flip side, I think Russell Westbrook's certainly going to be impacted with James Harden's arrival. But Russell Westbrook has been solid off the bench in his career in 66 games, averaged 15 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. That's still fantasy viable. I just don't know, as Raph pointed out, what is this going to do to the whole chemistry of the Los Angeles Clippers now that you have another ball-dominant guy that's kind of slowing up the pace? So Russell Westbrook's been a solid fantasy basketball player to date. So I hope that he can still maintain some value here, but he's definitely going to be impacted. I think also probably the biggest loser on the Clippers side is Norman Powell. Now that Westbrook is probably going to be coming off the bench, Powell becomes like the seventh man, and he really was just a points guy before that. And I feel like he's just going to get even less usage now that you have now another ball-dominant guy going to that second unit. So he's definitely a loser of this deal as well. And I throw out one other name. I think Tobias Harris is actually a winner in this. That's one less. Oh, yeah. He just moves up the totem pole in terms of his usage rate now that James Harden's out of the way. He came with the fourth option last year. Now he's like the third. He's been a top 30 fantasy player through the first week. I don't know if that's going to hold, but he's definitely going to exceed his ADP, which is well outside the top 80 this year.
We could expect Tobias Harris probably to bring down a few more rebounds. So his usage will be a little higher, obviously. But, yeah. Nothing that he's not familiar with from last season, in my opinion, a little bit. But we have a lot to talk about today because there's a lot of injuries. Of course, we got back-to-back conversations with the scheduling, which I really want to hit on. But before we do that, Rath, who goes farther in the postseason, Clippers or Sixers?
I'm gonna say Philly, just because I think there's a gap between themselves, Milwaukee, and Boston, and the rest of the East. I don't see that kind of gap for the Clippers. I think it's Denver clearly ahead of everyone else, and you've got like 4 or 5 different teams in the West behind them. And I think that can be a bit of a dogfight, in the first round of the playoffs. So I think I'm going to go Philadelphia.
Dan, how about you?
I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with the Clippers. I think that now that you have this all-star squad, they're going to be better in the regular season, probably have a better record than they have in years past because they have more healthier guys. And I think that that's going to bode well for them once they get to the postseason. One thing that we haven't seen is a healthy Kawhi Leonard and Paul George in the postseason. Both of them have balled out in respective times individually. So now that I think that there's a couple more bodies there to kind of help them weather the storm, this is going to be a problem once it comes to the postseason if they can all stay healthy. And that's a huge if. So we're assuming that all things are equal. I think the Clippers have a higher ceiling than the Sixers do with their current construct.
Rafi, you look like you want to say something about what Dan was saying.
No, because it'll just devolve into me saying something along the lines of we're talking about the Clippers here.
A bunch of non-performers for sure.
Like,
I'm with the Sixers.
Guys.
Not so much with like this current cast of players, but like the history of the franchise. Like, come on, man. Like, respectfully.
But the question was, you're asking who gets further. I'm not saying they win the championship, but
I didn't. I'm not. No, I know.
I
know. I'm just saying, like, that franchise may need to move into their new arena in Inglewood before they actually like get something done. To be honest,
the ghost of Sterling is still haunting them.
It might be.
Yeah.
It really might be. I legit need to see the Lakers and Clippers in the playoffs, first or second round.
Yeah,
I think that would be what we need to see now. But Rath, I'm with you. I'm breaking the tie. I'm going Sixers all day. Even though I'm a Pennsylvania guy, it's nothing to do with that. I agree with you with the Eastern Conference. It's a little easier to make some moves. The Celtics, not a great bench right now, and the Bucks still figuring out their chemistry as they start the season. So before we get to the injury news, everybody, make sure you check us out on Amazon Music. You go to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. It's really that simple. So go check that out. Let's talk about a few teams. One, I watched the Suns and the Spurs. Guess who live bet the Spurs and thought they had a losing bet? This guy. No, Kevin Durant not going to box out Victor Wembanyama. Then he gets stripped. Spurs get the dub. Phoenix really probably missing Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, foot and back injury for the two. Without a timeline right now, of course, Cavs and Knicks played a few nights ago. Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, those guys dealing with injuries too. So a lot going on in the NBA right now. Dan, I'll lead off with you this time. Where do you want to go with injuries and potential fantasy targets?
Fantasy target, I'm definitely getting concerned about the Phoenix Suns situation. Both Bradley Beal and Devin Booker without timetables for their return. Devin Booker's injury, it's weird. They were saying it was a toe injury, but then they said Frank Vogel mentioned ankle. So I'm a little bit confused about where that stands. But if this is the Desmond Bane issue that happened last year, what started out as a day-to-day thing became weeks, and then eventually something that he needed surgery on. So it's definitely something that's a bit concerning without much information about how he's progressing. I will say that he did get interviewed by the TNT staff last night, and he said it's a day-to-day thing and, it's continuing to progress. So I guess hearing it from Devin Booker himself, I guess that leaves a little bit of optimism, but I would be rushing to pick up Eric Gordon. And I never thought that I would say that in 2023, 2024, but that's just the case, man. Like, he's the next man up. There's not a lot of guards there, and he can provide you a good source of scoring, threes, will give you a little bit of assists, low end, but he's capable of 4 or 5 with a steal in there. And he's going to have a lot of usage here as potentially the second scoring option with Kevin Durant. So I definitely like picking up Eric Gordon in this situation, and maybe even Josh Okogie gets a little bit more run as a streamable guy, depending on the schedule, the way the scheduling is laid out for the Phoenix Suns.
If you bet the Phoenix Suns over win total, do me a favor, rip the ticket up right now. All right. They're going through some problems, but, I don't hate Eric Gordon. The fact that you said Eric Gordon, it can be the second leading scorer for them this timetable, this time period, that is troublesome.
It's very troublesome. I'm wet.
Who else are you going to look at,
sweating,
though?
man.
Josh Okogie, Jordan Goodwin, Grayson Allen.
I would have to go Grayson Allen. And the reason why I say that is the upcoming schedule. They play the Spurs again on Thursday. Then they have a Saturday, Sunday back-to-back. Maybe Eric Gordon can play all 3 of those games, but we've seen him have injury issues in the past, specifically the knees. So that may be the one thing that gives you some pause on picking him up. He's more widely rostered, and you certainly understand that. But I think people may want to look a bit deeper at like a Grayson Allen or even a Jordan Goodwin, just because of the lack of playmakers that they have right now, especially with Booker and Beal out. Those guys are a bit younger, don't have the medical histories of an Eric Gordon, so maybe they're worth a look too towards the end of this week.
Yeah, Grayson Allen certainly having 2 really good back-to-back games. Had 19 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, 5 field goals, all 3-pointers made. And actually, interesting point about him, he has 13 made shots on the season. 10 of those are 3-pointers. So that is the way to approach Grayson Allen. If you need 3-pointers, he's not a bad pickup at all. Let's talk about Cleveland a little bit, Dan, because Darius Garland, he's out. Donovan Mitchell played on Tuesday. Don't know if he's going to play the back-to-back with the Knicks. We'll get to that a little later in the show. And then Caris LeVert also dealing with some hammy issues. Anybody on Cleveland you're looking at picking up going down that bench?
Yeah, 33% rostered in Yahoo leagues. Mr. Isaac Okoro. This guy came into the league as a defensive stopper, but he's added some offensive ability to his game. He's knocking down threes. He's averaging just under 13 points per game. I think I like the minutes. That's the main thing I'm chasing right now. And with Caris LeVert, he would have been the option. He's, a little bit over 50% rostered right now. But with him battling this hamstring injury, as well as Donovan Mitchell, who just came back, but, he could be a sit candidate for, any back-to-back situations or 3 games in 4 nights. And obviously Darius Garland's still out. So I think Isaac Okoro is going to be an early winner here as long as he continues to get these minutes. He's averaging, close to 30. So I think that this is a pretty safe pickup to stream for at least the time being.
4 straight games with 10-plus points and 6-plus rebounds for Isaac Okoro. That's all you really can ask for from a guy like him right now. Such a young age. Rath, any opinion on Cleveland? Of course, we haven't even talked about possibly the biggest injury news, which is De'Aaron Fox with a sprained right ankle. So talk a little bit about Cleveland, and if you want to hop into Sacramento too.
Yeah, I think Dan pretty much hit on it with Cleveland. I don't see anyone else that's like rosterable in terms of guys who are widely available. George Niang's minutes have been a bit disappointing for me in terms of not just the production, but how many minutes he's getting or not getting. So I think you leave him alone right now. But yeah, it's basically a quarrel. Moving on to Sacramento, that's an interesting situation because Davion Mitchell, when he's been a fill-in starter, really hasn't offered much. He's not a very good shooter. The defensive stats, I don't think they're enough to make up for the lack of scoring. If anything, if you have someone like, say, a Keegan Murray rostered, maybe he gets more usage in these coming games here. But in terms of picking someone up in a deep league, pick up Davion Mitchell, but I don't think it's something that you absolutely have to do.
Any love for Malik Monk, Chris Duarte, Dan?
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah, definitely got love for Malik Monk. I would prioritize him over Davion Mitchell because, as Raph said, Davion Mitchell just hasn't done much in the opportunities that he's had. It's like 10 points and like 4 assists per game. One person that I think actually gets more minutes when De'Aaron Fox misses games is Kevin Huerter. He's actually only 49% rostered. He's a person you could also look at. Obviously you know what he's good for. 3-pointers, little sneaky dimes in there. But he gets a lot of minutes with Mike Brown. And I don't know if you guys saw that video of Mike Brown absolutely losing his mind in practice the other day. I feel like they're going to be playing some inspired basketball. So, I'd probably be looking at Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk the most. Both guys are under 50% rostered in Yahoo leagues.
Yeah, I like both. Both those guys can knock down the triples, which is very important there for Sacramento Kings basketball. But they were embarrassed the other night against the Warriors. So hoping that they turn around and look a lot better, at least in the first half. You can tell what I'm betting on. All right, Raph. Let's talk about Brooklyn. Spencer Dinwiddie, ankle. Nick Claxton, ankle. Cam Johnson, calf. Ben Simmons, healthy, though. Where are you going with the Nets? In balling, yes.
Yeah, it's a funny situation there because I think the guys that you would pinpoint as like the targets to add have blown up to a point where you can't really find them. Like Cam Thomas, he's like, 85% rostered right now? He's been on fire. I think if you have him as a top 20 player, like we'll get into the buy low and sell high later, but he's somebody, if you have him, you got on that bandwagon early, you might want to kick the tires on seeing what you can potentially get for him if you have a good roster otherwise. Because I don't think he's going to play at this level all season. I don't know if Jacque Vaughn is the most comfortable with it. He seems to be a bit better with Cam Thomas's scoring outburst this year than he was last year. But, yeah, I don't know, man. There's only so much you get to do when you really don't play much defense. But in terms of like a pickup, I don't know, maybe a Royce O'Neal. Like we've seen Dorian Finney-Smith start with Nick Claxton down. They've gone small. Maybe you go with him, but I don't know. He really hasn't given a whole lot in terms of production. So at best, Dorian Finney-Smith, but not really too thrilled about the options right now in standard leagues.
Yeah, the Nets are definitely scaring me in fantasy. I don't know who I'd want there. Except, I guess Ben Simmons would be the guy, Dan. Like you said, he's balling right now. We do got to give him some kudos because we were talking some decent smack.
I was talking heavy, and I'm eating crow right now because this man is actually playing really well. I was just actually looking at his ranking, man. Like I wasn't expecting him to make this kind of impact. Like, dude is 39th in per game value right now. 39th in points leagues, around 50 in head-to-head leagues, which is crazy. Like, but he's been efficient. So, when you're getting 10 rebounds and 8 assists, like that's gonna be huge for fantasy.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he's been impressive. We'll see how long this lasts for Ben Simmons. But do you have anybody worth targeting in Brooklyn, or are you just passing on all their fantasy players in general?
I actually like Dorian Finney-Smith, kind of to the same tune of Isaac Okoro. He hits threes. He's hitting 4 threes in the last 2 games, 2 threes in the game prior to that. He's good for 6 rebounds. I think you can expect double-digit points, and I think you'll get occasional steals because they're running small. Maybe you can get a shot at some blocks in there too. But it's more about the schedule for Brooklyn that I'm attracted by. They got 3 games to close out the week and then 4 games going into the next week. Now, they are on the heavier slates, but if you have a roster spot available, I think Dorian Finney-Smith is actually going to be pretty valuable now that Nick Claxton's already been ruled out ahead of, 4 games? And then you have Spencer Dinwiddie also down. So they're just looking for bodies at this point. And 30 minutes, I'll take it.
Yeah, he could certainly provide 30 minutes for you with all those injuries piling up for the Nets. There's been a lot in the NBA so far.
I should have mentioned Lonnie Walker the fourth, though. Like, he's someone else, who's widely available that could be an option, especially if you need some 3-pointers. I think he can provide some value there. So,
yeah, he's got 2 games under his belt so far, 19 and 14 points. Got a couple boards and assists in the last game. So definitely someone worth keeping on the radar. Someone I didn't expect to hear for fantasy, but that's why you got Rath and Dan here, man. They're keeping you guys above water all season long. And if you need to talk about football, well, I'll keep you above water because Sunday Night Football on NBC, it's going to be a good one, boys. 2 of the best NFL quarterbacks in the league face off on Sunday night. Don't miss out on Josh Allen and the Bills facing off against Joe Burrow and the Bengals in Cincinnati. Coverage of the AFC Clash begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. I'll probably have a bet in that game, but I'm rolling with the Carolina Panthers again this week. And I'm going to the Steelers game, boys. So let's go.
Wow, that is some gross betting, man.
Yeah, but that's how we get paid, baby. That's how we get paid.
Exactly.
All right. We got a lot of buy low, sell high candidates going into the week 2 of the NBA season. We also have a lot of schedule talk to talk about. I want to dig into that super hard because I got some problems with the NBA. But first, let's start with some buy low, sell high candidates. Rath, I'll start with you. Who's on your radar?
In terms of sell high, I already mentioned one of the guys, Cam Thomas. As good as he's been, I don't see him being a top 20 player all season long. Maybe top 100, but maybe I'm selling him short. But I think right now would be a good time if he can find, someone who's willing to pay a bit more because they're panicked about their own roster. Maybe you consider that. We mentioned this guy earlier, Kelly Oubre, that 5th starter in Philadelphia. I don't know. He's been good thus far, but I don't know if moving into the starting lineup is going to give him the fantasy boost that some may expect just because he's starting. Because now you're on the floor more with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. So maybe he holds steady. I think that he's another guy you want to consider, making a move on if you have him rostered. And the third guy is actually questionable for tonight's game, Jalen Duren up in Detroit. He's been outstanding thus far. I think he's averaging like 15 rebounds a game, something like that. Shooting 80% from the field, some ridiculous number. I think he's going to be good all year, but when you talk about a guy who's like that top 25, top 30 range, I don't know if he'll be able to sustain that. So I think if you have him, he's another guy you might want to consider seeing what you can get on par with that kind of current value.
Through 4 games, Jalen Duren has more rebounds than Nikola Jokic, Evan Mobley, Luka Doncic, Julius Randle, and Clint Capella. I would say sell high if you can. You might be able to get a lot for him, and Cam Thomas has the 3rd most points per game in the NBA so far. So definitely like those 2 looks, Rath. Dan, I'll ask you this one. Is Desmond Bane a guy worth considering selling high on before Ja Morant comes back? Because he's having a really good start. And who are some of your guys on your radar?
First of all, y'all are crazy for selling Jalen Duren. This breakout is for real. I don't know what y'all are talking about.
He's here to stay.
Yeah. He is here to stay, man. The Pistons are terrible.
I didn't say he wasn't.
They miss a lot of shots. This man is going to be I don't know how high. Not top 20. Not top 20.
See, that's what I'm saying.
But top 50, you're still going to sell a top 50? Top 60. Top 60, I'll give you. Top 60.
I'd consider it. I would consider it for the right price.
I'd rather have Jalen Duren than Walker Kessler right now.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah.
Especially at cost. So that's the other thing is like where you got Duren, you're probably going to get a win from where you trade him anyway because he's playing so high above expectation. You might be able to sneak in there and grab somebody that is a buy low. Desmond Bane, would I sell him? Nah. Nah. He's just too good. And even when Ja Morant comes back, like he's already been a top 30 guy with Morant in the lineup. So I'm not worried about Bane, regressing or falling to earth or anything like that. Like he's the real deal. And that's why, fantasy managers are paying the 3rd round draft capital, sometimes 2nd round for him because he's that good. Buy lows for me, Pascal Siakam has been hot garbage. I think he's a guy that you could definitely get right now. I mean, he's shooting like 32% from the field. And I feel like it's partially because it's the new head coach and he's been very adamant about this. Is Rajakovic has been very adamant about spreading the ball around, and it's been great for Scotty Barnes. But Pascal Siakam's definitely someone that's been affected by this. I think he'll right the ship at some point. He's playing for a contract, and it doesn't look like Toronto wants to pay him. So maybe he'll play better to potentially get some more suitors on the trade market. So I'd expect him to be a lot better. Another player that I want to get your guys' take on is Paolo Banchero. At first, I was like, "Ooh, this is great. He's not really forcing the issue. He might be more efficient this year, and the Magic are playing better." But this dude is struggling right now offensively. The rebounds are there, the assists are there, but he just can't find his shot. He doesn't look aggressive. Is that somebody you would want to buy low on? Because at cost, this is a top 60, top 70 guy in terms of ADP, but right now he's outside the top, 250. So is that a guy you'd be interested in buying low on?
Yeah, he's not going to be that bad throughout the course of the season. So I think that's definitely a good call on the buy low guy. When I looked at the rankings, I didn't get that far down.
He's hiding down there, man.
I knew he was bad, but I didn't look, I didn't look that far down the list. So yeah, I think if you can get him,
that's a solid one. Go ahead, Rath. I'll go ahead, Rath. I was gonna say just quickly, those two, Banchero and Siakam, they got to get better. Like their shooting has to fall into form. Like Siakam's not going to play his first 111 minutes of the season and score 44 points. Like that's insane.
Right.
That's insane.
So yeah,
what would you be looking to get for him, Rath? What would you be looking to do with Paolo?
I think I would aim for the top 70 to top 80 range in terms of a player I get back, because I feel like that's what Banchero can be at his height. I don't know if he can be much higher than that. Turnovers are a concern for me, but I don't think you're not going to be aiming for like a top 50 guy, because most people are going to laugh at you like you're insane. But I think that 70 to 80 range, you may be able to get someone back in that area for Paolo Banchero.
So Jalen Duren, you do it.
See,
would you do that? Would you do that, Rath?
I would do that. My whole point was I don't see him being a top 20 player. I can see him being like
that's a realistic
50,
deal. That's a
60.
realistic trade, though. I think that's a fair trade.
Yeah. But like top 20, that was my whole point in having him as a sell high. Like
he is. I feel you.
So Paolo had 20 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, half block, and a steal last year, and you're willing to sell that for Duren through his first 4 games this season? Yeah.
I think that's a fair deal. Like if you're looking to sell Duren, I think that's an attainable get in return based on how bad Paolo's been.
I'll put it like this: it's easier for us to find a 20-point scorer than a 15 per game rebounder.
Yeah,
that's why I would do it.
Point take. Yeah, that's a solid point. I mean, there's only 2-3 guys in the NBA right now that are averaging that through 3 or 4 games. So makes a lot of point. I like that. It's an interesting conversation. I'm glad you brought the Siakam stuff to me, Dan, because now I got a player prop better to attack. So thank you for that. Who else stinks right now, guys? Come on.
Yeah. I was gonna throw out a couple other names, man. LaMelo Ball's weirdly on a minutes cap, and people are probably panicking about him too, being that he's a first-round pick and he's not playing that well. I'm scared of Charlotte's offense. It's disgusting, but at the same time, it's LaMelo Ball, right? So once that minutes cap gets lifted, I feel like that's a great opportunity to get a guy that isn't playing very well. I think he's right now, he's outside the top 100. Similarly, Trae Young, not playing well, shooting horribly, but Trae's used to doing that, but he's still putting up pretty good numbers. But if people are just looking straight at the value, I would take some flyers, man. Go try to get Trae, because he's only going to get better too.
Love that. Rath, anybody else you want to point out, like Brandon Miller?
I think he's playing well. That's a good call there. He's played well so far. I don't think I would sell him though. And the reason why, Dan kind of touched on it, that's a bad team. Like we get to the trade deadline. Even before that, I wouldn't be shocked if he's easily playing 32, 33 minutes per game, because Gordon Hayward's had his medical issues in the past. Who knows what's going to happen with Miles Bridges? I mean, I would hold on. I would hold Brandon Miller just because you don't expect him to continue to play as well as he has to start this season. But the circumstances, I think, make him a solid hold candidate right now. What I would say is Cade Cunningham is a buy low guy. I would consider that. He's outside the top 150 percentages, turnovers. Yeah, that's the biggest issue right there with him. Maybe part of it is that not having Monte Morris. I know Killian Hayes played well in the preseason and has been adequate, but to not have that solid, backup point guard kind of take some of the playmaking responsibilities off of Cade's shoulders. Maybe that's impacting the turnover numbers a bit, but I think he's someone else to consider as a buy low guy right now.
Yeah, I was wondering when we were going to have the Cade Cunningham conversation because he has been complete hit or miss so far through 4 games this year. I mean, a game of 30 and 9, a 25 and 10, and then he had a 12 and 6, 17 and 5, and yeah, shooting percentages down, turnovers 5 or more in 3 straight games.
Atrocious. That's like what him and Wemby, man. They just can't take care of the ball. And it's tanking their fantasy value. But I think if you have the right roster build where you don't really care about turnovers, I have a couple teams like that. I think Raph's exactly right. Like, you got to go get Cade Cunningham and all these people that are being they're being penalized by this high turnover rate, but otherwise their stats are decent. Just want to go back to Brandon Miller. This is like my, coming back to Jesus moment of like, I got to reflect and say sorry for this. Cause like I wasn't high on Brandon Miller, and thank you, Raph. Before my rankings locked preseason, I moved him up out of that 200 range up into like the 130s, but this dude's been nasty. Like, he's 4th in the league in points off the bench right now. And I don't know if he can sustain shooting 47% from the field, but like, he's a knockdown 3-point shooter. He hasn't really done much for stocks, but he's getting to the line 3 times a game. So like, efficiency wise, he's helping you out. And I think that's only more opportunity going forward. He's already getting 30 minutes. Gordon Hayward's either going to get traded or hurt, as Raph said. So if anything, I would be holding and actually be interested in buying Brandon Miller right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like I said, he was my dark horse for Rookie of the Year. Obviously, Wemby's a front runner. Chet's got to be there, then Scoot too. But I mean, I'm gonna keep hitting the horn. I think Brandon Miller is going to be, an Ingram, a Durant type player. Like, he has all the tools to be put together. Defensively, we'll just see what he's made of. But he won't continue shooting 47%. But I think he could hit 40% in his rookie season. We'll see what happens there with him. Let me ask you this: 2 rookies, because my brother called me yesterday, FaceTime me. He did a $200 those the deck cards, where you get rookies and everything. He got Ausar Thompson and Brandon Miller. So he was like basically head over heels happy. What do you think about Thompson so far to start the season, and also Wemby? Because we talked about him a little bit, but now that we've seen 1 week of Victor Wembanyama, what do you like about him, or what don't you like about him? Raph, I'll start with you.
Wemby's overrated. No, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. I just wanted to see if we can liven things up a bit, but I think he's off to a fine start. As Dan mentioned, the turnovers are a bit high, but you expect that from a rookie. He's 7'4", trying to dribble against the best, across the board, the best athletes in the world in terms of basketball. So you're going to have some issues there. I think about it through 1 week, and I think I'd like him a bit more if they had Trey Jones starting. Just to have an actual point guard on the floor to get him the basketball in spots where he can be at his best. And I don't know if that's always happening. I think there have been some times where he's kind of gotten looked off by guys who decide it's their time to seek out personal glory. Doesn't always work out. Did work out for Devin Vassell in the 4th quarter on Tuesday. But I think Wembanyama, he's on the path you'd expect him to be on. Like, no one expected him to come in averaging 25, 30 a night. He's learning. He'll get better. And I really like what Ausar Thompson has done in Detroit thus far. Dan called him as a starter during the preseason. It's a great call there. The defense that he's brought to the table, solid offensive player too, but I think the defensive stats from a fantasy standpoint is what you really have to like about him thus far.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Wembanyama, I want to point out that I lost on my blocks bet on him, and then he proceeds to light it up in the blocks department the next 3 games. But that's how it happens. He looks great. He's going to change so many shots. And I think if you guys didn't see what Paul George was talking about in an interview about Wembanyama, and he said the fact that his wingspan's 8 foot, he forces you to think about where you're going to shoot or how you're going to shoot, even if he's 3-4 steps away from you. So, yeah, I thought Wemby's been really fun to watch so far. Dan?
No, it's been great. And I love that you brought up Wembanyama and you got the alien hat on. It's like perfect segue. But also, I think I'm not worried about Wembanyama at all. If anything, like I feel great about his early season prospects. Like the turnovers always happen for rookies, especially guys that are drawing all of the attention on defense. Robert Covington mentioned it after that same game, saying that how much defensive pressure they were putting on him. And that's something he's going to have to learn as the season progresses. And it's only going to get easier for him the more that he learns this game. And right now, like the turnovers, they'll probably still be high and the field goal percentage may be inconsistent, but he's still going to put up numbers. And the blocks, they're going to be random, but they're going to be there. He's going to be awesome. So, yeah, I have no worries about it. I wish I had a share. I have none of him. I have more Chet. But Victor Wembanyama is going to be a fun player to roster. I'm so glad you brought up Ausar Thompson because I can't say enough good things about this dude, man. He's averaging 10.5 rebounds on top of all those stocks. But the thing I'm actually most encouraged about, and we're going back to this buy low thing. I don't know what it is about the Pistons, man. I'm just obsessed with this team this year. But I actually feel like there's an opportunity to buy on him because he's been so bad at shooting. But if you look at the numbers, majority of his shots come from 2-point field goals, and he's just missing bunnies at the rim. He's shooting 25%, 4 of 16 at the rim. If he starts hitting those shots, you're looking at a double-double guy. So that efficiency is going to come, man. And he's still confident enough to pull from 3. He's attempting 3 threes a game, 2.8, something like that. So I think there's still upside for him to be even better. And I wrote an article about him today. It's my rookie report. First of the month, I'll be kind of assessing each of the rookies that are most notable in fantasy. And the biggest risers for me were Brandon Miller and Ausar Thompson. And I think Ausar Thompson can be even better once he gets that scoring together. And I think I compared him earlier to be Sixers Andre Iguodala. He's actually moving more quickly towards Sean Marion already from a fantasy perspective, which is crazy to expect from a rookie.
Yeah.
Sean Marion, legendary jumper, baby. A little
legendary jumper, but amazing fantasy player.
Yeah, he did a little bit of everything, but didn't think I'd hear that name today either. But yeah, Ausar Thompson, I think him and Wemby will both, once they get a little more comfortable with their shots, they'll start hitting those threes. The percentage will be better. They won't be, 14 and 25% through 4 games like they are right now. Same with the turnovers. So 2 guys we're definitely watching. Get your stock of Ausar Thompson in. That's Dan's guy. He's going to be pegged him this season. We're going to get you a jersey when he finishes top 100 in fantasy. Let's talk about some teams and their scheduling for week 2, because there's a lot of teams that have 3 games, 2 games. Only the Clippers have 1 game for the second week of the season. But I want to hit on briefly, I don't understand why the NBA now is bringing in back-to-backs, but letting the same teams play back-to-back in a new city. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, the Knicks and the Cavs played last night in Cleveland, and now they play tonight in New York.
That sounds so brutal, dude. Like,
why?
Why would you...
Raph,
makes no sense.
Come on. Like, what is this?
The only rationale is that, well, both of you are going to be dealing with this travel nonsense, and you get to play each other. So it's not like you're flying home and playing a different team that was waiting for you, what have you. So I guess that's the only rationale, but it's like, back-to-backs are an issue. How about instead of putting all the onus on the players, you set up the schedule to where that you don't have these back-to-backs, especially early in the season. Starting early October like the NHL does, and I think that would alleviate a lot of these issues. And remember, it's these training staffs that are advising coaches to not play players, advising players, you may want to sit tonight. So it's not all on the players, but that's kind of how the argument has been framed in recent years, especially with the NBA negotiating these new TV deals. They want guys out there as much as possible, yet they put together schedules that make it very difficult in some cases for guys to be as available as they want to be. Doesn't make too much sense, but I don't get paid to make those decisions. So
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell, I mean, like, he's the perfect example that he played while he's banged up on the injury report, and now you got to turn around, play again, and travel to that city. I mean, that's very hard to get your star player playing when they're already down other guys as well. So, Dan, any opinions on this, or do you want to hop into who you're looking at for scheduling this week?
I mean, I think Raphielle brings up a great point. You know, you're trying to improve the product. You institute these rest management protocols and policies and stuff. And like, we're already 2 weeks into the season, and the injury reports are looking like a CVS receipt. Like, it's just crazy, man. Like, we just got to get better scheduling. And it's frustrating from a fantasy perspective because you get late absences like Brandon Ingram that was ruled out an hour before the Pelicans game started, which is like, it's fine. Like, I'm all cool with, you know, players resting and getting their injury management plans together, but like, we got to get more transparency here. Like, especially from a betting perspective, like, come on, we got to sharpen up the tools here. But when it comes for pickups for the rest of the week, I'm looking at the Suns. They have 3 games for the remainder of the week. They play on Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday, all light slate. So, you know, the Eric Gordons, the Grayson Allens, I think that those make really savvy pickups. I also like the Orlando Magic. They play on Thursday and Saturday. Again, you know, lighter slates. I think that those are probably the best streaming teams that are available right now. But going into next week, I talked about Dorian Finney-Smith. The Brooklyn Nets, they play 3 games to close out this week as well. And then they have 4 games going into next week. So that's a lot of games in production that you can get from an injury-riddled team that you can probably scoop up some value on. So, Raph, any thoughts?
I think Josh Green in Dallas would be an interesting guy. Now, they play 3 and 4 to end this week. Kind of a crowded schedule. They play tonight, and then I think Friday, Saturday, which is 7 and 8 games in terms of the schedule. So that's not great. But Kyrie Irving with that sprained foot, he's doubtful to play Wednesday. You know, foot injuries are nothing to play with. Same with hamstring. So I wouldn't be surprised if he only played in one of those games at most. And then next week they play 4. So I think Josh Green, you're not going to get a prolific scorer, but what he can provide defensively, an adequate offense. I think he's someone to look at, especially in deeper leagues.
Yeah, I like that take a lot too. I will note that the Chicago Bulls have 4 games this week, and they also have a Friday night game at home against Brooklyn, and they go on the road to Denver the next night in that altitude. So
good old schedule loss.
Nuggets are going to be laying like 8.5, maybe 10.5. And I said no NBA betting on the weekends, but I will be betting that game. So that's the stuff I just don't understand. Like, it just doesn't make much sense to me. But I do like the names of the players you guys are bringing up here. A couple teams I want to talk about before we get out of here because I've been very impressed with the Boston Celtics. They have 2 games this week. I know their bench doesn't look nearly how we want it to look, but it's expected how it looks so far. But the Lakers bench, I think the Lakers are so deep, and I think they're going to be we should have been talking about the Lakers, not the Clippers, in my opinion. But Rath, any opinions on those 2 teams or anybody else that's caught your eye this week?
Boston's been about what I expected. You've got the best defensive backcourt in the NBA, in my opinion. Drew Holiday and Derek White. Kristaps Porzingis, his transition has looked seamless thus far. And obviously, you got the 2 J's. Al Horford is that 6th man. We'll see how that depth behind those 6 players develops as the season progresses. Porzingis with his health issues, that gives you some pause, you know, if they're to lose him for an extended period. But, yeah, I really like what I've seen out of them. The Lakers, we've seen some good things. Like Taurean Prince, I think he's someone that you pretty much have to have rostered right now. I know he's not the sexiest fantasy player, but he's starting. He's producing quite well in terms of scoring in double figures, 3-pointers. So I think he's a solid fantasy guy. In terms of their prospects overall, it all hinges on Anthony Davis. Like, we've seen him have some dominant games already, but we've also seen him have a game where he just disappeared. You know, so if he's Anthony Davis that people talk about so much about, this MVP caliber guy, they'll be in the conversation come late May, early June, probably. If not, You know, and you're putting it on 39, soon to be 40-year-old LeBron James. And as much confidence as he has in himself, as so many of us have in him, at a certain point, Father Time kind of, you know, settles the score, so to speak. So they really need a consistent Anthony Davis.
He's not the little the 19-year-old LeBron
Yeah.
James in that picture right there on my wall that I've kept since I was a kid. He's 20 years older now. That's crazy. I'm 20 years older now. What is going on here? But, Dan, any teams that caught your attention to the first week of the season that you want to give a shout out to?
Before I get to that, I just want to go back to your Bulls comment for a second. They do play 4 games in 6 days. So one player that I actually have my eye on, if you're looking for stocks, Alex Caruso is averaging almost 3 stocks a game. If you're looking for those steals and blocks, definitely give him a look. I know he's popped up on the injury report, so keep an eye on that. But I think he's someone that could actually be useful this week going into the beginning of next week. And you can drop him on next Tuesday if you want to. Teams I'm surprised about. Not really. I feel like much of what I expected we're kind of seeing. You touched on the Boston Celtics. They're so top heavy with that starting lineup. I think from a fantasy perspective, that's great that they're all the starting unit is getting all of the work. Because we've seen Jalen Brown struggle his first game, and then he went off the last couple of games. Jason Tatum's been consistent. Porzingis has been consistent. Derek White. So I think we've got what we expected. I think I'm surprised at how well Giannis and Damian Lillard are kind of coming together. Chris Middleton still being brought along a little bit slowly, but I do like what the Milwaukee Bucks look like. A little bit worried about the Miami Heat and what's going on with Jimmy Butler. He's getting a lot of injury maintenance right now, and it seems to be his knee. He's 35 years old. I don't know. They don't have a lot of depth, so I would actually be a little bit concerned about Jimmy Butler and his outlook right now. Tyler Hero's getting a lot of usage, so I think that's a player that many were probably not really expecting to be as good as he is, but he's definitely playing with a chip on his shoulder right now. And as long as Jimmy's out, Tyler Hero is going to be cooking. So I think that's probably my biggest surprise is Jimmy Butler being banged up already.
Yeah, a lot of usage there for Jimmy Buckets. I guess he's got to go with a new look, man. The goth one wasn't it for him. It brought him injury and bad luck. So he's got to come up with something else there.
Yeah.
But you guys did miss one important note about that something's happened through the NBA in 1 week. The Golden State Warriors are undefeated on the road. They are 3-0 away from home. They got Sacramento at home tonight. Then they go to Oklahoma, to Cleveland, to Detroit, and to Denver. So my question to you guys as we close out the show, will the Golden State Warriors finish with a winning road record this season? Dan.
I mean, if Steph Curry is playing on this 2016 MVP level, yeah, they will. Wiggins isn't playing well. Klay Thompson's already being load managed. Draymond Green's still getting integrated. This team hasn't even really showed up yet. So as much as Steph can carry them, and then you get, the added bonus of players actually playing to expectation, this team's going to be scary. And I said it, you can never count out the Warriors, man. And I think the fact that they're winning on the road already bodes well for their outlook this season.
Raph? Yeah, I think they will. All they have to do is go 21-20. And I think what we've seen thus far, I think they're more than capable of doing that. Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody have made solid strides in their respective games, so that strengthens the bench. And on that rare night where they sit guys, Trayce Jackson-Davis showed himself to be quite prepared, for his NBA moment down in New Orleans the other night. Double-double off the bench. So I think they've got good options. The depth of this team is a bit better thus far than what it was last year. Obviously, their main guys have to stay healthy, but yeah, I think the Warriors will be a better product on the road this season than they were last year.
Yeah, I think they're going to go 22-19 on the road, 22-20, whatever it is, right? They're barely going to do it, but they're going to do it. And I think we're going to be talking a lot about Trayce Jackson-Davis next week because as a college basketball guy, I was all over him in the Hoosiers last season. I loved me some Jackson Davis. He was the second best player in the country last year. So great show, guys, overall. A lot of great info for everybody, whether you're adding players to your roster, whether you're dropping, trading, or you're just trying to make some money, whatever the case may be. We give you great information here. For Dan Titus of Yahoo Sports, Raphielle Johnson of NBC Sports, and Vaughn Dalzell of NBC Sports. We appreciate you guys. This was the Rotoworld Basketball Show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we appreciate you. We'll see you next time.